Vice President Pence's advisory group. And much of the focus is on the moon. There's a couple key things. They want partnerships around the world, and I think there's a real opportunity. I know we started partnerships is to make these joint missions. The second, they want public-private partnerships, and I think this is where private industry can get involved and actually partially fund efforts. So I think there's a real opportunity, and universities, research laboratories, is to look at public-private partnerships. I think in addition to government programs, there are now, I'm familiar with a couple groups of young people around the world that are looking at where you could land a small spacecraft, not as small, I'm talking about, but a kilogram. The total mission cost would be about $10 million. And those are the kind of things that could be funded completely by the private sector. And one of the things that NASA does, which I find very useful, is that NASA has signed an agreement called the Space Act Agreement that allows the private sector to use facilities and capabilities. And I think that the very impressive research facilities the government has in Korea could be open to some of those. So I think there's an opportunity to work with the United States, work with the private sector, and even do private missions in Korea, and also that the private sector a bigger role in the government missions. But I think by the end of the 2020s we will see, as I said, humans living and settling on the moon. The first, real lunar citizens will be born at the end of the next decade.
And I believe in the future, sooner or later, we will need the space investment. I think to achieve that kind of stuff, number one, most important one is the price, launching price, right? So actually, Elon Musk promised it will lower the launching price to 1/10 or 1/20, but right now just 1/3 or 1/2, something like that. So how about what's the future? If you can do someone who can lower the price of the launch to 1/10 or 1/20?
Well, I think it's possible to lower the cost a lot. I mean, whenever I meet Elon Musk, I remind him, he said he's going to lower the cost a factor of 10. I said, how come he's charging only, he's only lowered it a factor of 2? He usually tells me to go away then. But I think that he's on the right track. The first thing is important is reusability. That if our airliners only make one trip, it'd be very expensive to get a ticket. So it's important to build reusable systems. Both Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos are doing that. Second, it's important to get the number of launches up to very large numbers, that rather than launching 10 or 20, to launch hundreds a year. And I think that the third is to look at new technologies. One of the things we're very excited about is, as I mentioned, is using other approaches rather than using rocket fuel. You push things with lasers, and we're seeing a lot of interest in new technology. But I think it's possible to lower the cost of getting to space by not just a factor of 10, but a factor of 100. But one of the things that helps is Elon now has competition. Competition is good at lowering costs. Jeff Bezos will probably start, producing things that are half Elon's cost, and we'll see a competition. And that works.
But it seems like Elon's doing those jobs, some kind of collaboration or some support from NASA, but Jeff Bezos doing by his own money. Jeff saying he's spent $1 billion per year, something like that. So what do you think about their competition? Who will win?
That's a good question. As you noted, Elon only spent government money. think it's a good effort. I know both of them. I think Bezos may win in the end. Eventually, because he has more money. And he's willing to take more risk in the end, because when you're spending government money, then you can't take as many risks. Although Elon certainly did take a lot of risks. But it's to me a very interesting competition. And it may be that somebody else will emerge that beats both of them.
Actually, Jeff Bezos will go to the moon.
Yes.
Rather than the Mars. A lot of the possibility of success. Well, we have another different, but anyway, this is important. How do you monitor, evaluate the basic research? Can you give some specific indicators? I don't know if you can answer this.
How do you monitor?
How do you monitor and evaluate basic
research? Well, my background, I'm a research astronomer, and I think that the best way to monitor basic research is peer review. To my mind, that's for basic science, that's one of the most important efforts is that your results are submitted for peer review. The way we do our breakthrough projects is that we've established advisory committees for each of our projects that we have, 30 noted scientists in the area, and we peer review everything. Now, that having been said, sometimes the most radical breakthroughs don't get peer reviewed. So I think there needs to be a small percentage of resources that are kept for what might be just crazy ideas. And that's always hard to do. When I worked for NASA, I kind of quietly kept some money aside that we put on things that everybody thought were stupid. And most of them turned out to be stupid. But every once in a while, something is a breakthrough. One of those things is the idea of using satellites to observe the Earth. And I had some young people that wanted to do that. All of my senior spacecraft people said that was stupid. You could never get resolution. Those people were limited. And I found out later that their first investor was Yuri Milner, my current sponsor. And they created Planet, that now has hundreds of these satellites in orbit that allows them to take an image of a 2 meters resolution every case in the planet. So sometimes it's important to mostly use peer review, but reserve a little bit for the crazy idea.
Well, that the question comes over. It's many equations system. Talking about the non-static system. This is talking about the very fast one. Also, 90 years per year. But what about when you have then how much is not
Well, as I noted, I think that sending humans to the moon, I think it's going to happen in the middle of next decade. I think that it may turn out as a surprise.
right.
Elon Musk is talking about that. Ground moon within a year or two. I believe that the next human landing will happen by 2025 on the moon. And I think Mars by 2030. Very short period of time. And that one of the most interesting things that we found out with lunar research in the last few decades is that on the moon, particularly at the poles of the moon, are a lot of resources for life. There's ice on the lunar poles, and there's also carbon compound molecules and other so you can support life there. So I'm actually very optimistic that humans will get back to the moon very soon.
What about at the time, about 3 or 4 years ago, we were talking about NASA would send the spacecraft into the pole, moving pole. Right?
Yes.
So is it going?
Well, that's a big argument right now. This is the Lunar Prospector. It was a program that NASA was working on. I know Harry was working on it as well. About a month ago, NASA canceled it.
Oh, really?
But then they were directed to reinstate it by Congress. So this is an argument. I think one of the problems is it's become very expensive. And so to try to look at how these things can be done more cheaply. But that was a spacecraft designed to go to the pole of the moon and dig into the ice there and figure out just how much resources there are. Luxembourg is sponsoring with iSpace a small lunar lander, which I think will be there in a few years. So we may see the next missions to be private ones. And involving countries like Luxembourg that aren't considered space powers.
Another question maybe interesting stuff. They are talking about a little bit about asteroid mining or space mining stuff. Do you think space mining will earn money?
Well, I hope so. About 7 or 8 years ago, we had a postdoctoral fellow at NASA Ames who was from Luxembourg. And he came and told me that, over some wine, I might add, I discovered Luxembourg grows good wine, is that I should come and talk to Luxembourg because they were very interested in space. Who, where? But I went and visited and met with a number of the ministers, and including the Minister of the Economy, who is now the Deputy Prime Minister. And we had a series of conferences involving mining companies and experts on the moon and asteroids. And we concluded that, again, within a decade, that using resources from space makes a lot of sense. And I think the first resource is just water. Water that can support human missions, water that can support being turned into fuel. One of the key problems today is there's several hundred satellites in geosynchronous orbit that to keep them there, you need to use fuel. So all that fuel has to come from the ground. I think our analysis shows that it's cheaper to bring the fuel from the moon or from asteroids, so that there is beginning to be a potential market. Now, eventually, if we have Jeff Bezos doing heavy industries, all of the resources, the raw materials, including metals, there is a class of asteroids called M-class that are a few percent of them that are pure metal. Even a small one, a few tens of meters in diameter, has more platinum in it than platinum metals than all of the Earth uses today. Now, if you brought one back, I'm sure it would ruin the market. So maybe you would just bring a little bit back at a time. But within 20 years, I think, getting some of our rare earth metals, rare earths from space will really make a lot of sense.
So, that one also very much depends on how much the launch price, right? One last question, I think no more question from Flora. I think you are wine lover.
Yeah.
So what's the best wine in Silicon Valley area?
He knows me too well. About 3 years ago, I persuaded my wife to buy a house on the central coast of California, a town called Paso Robles. And they make a very, very good set of wines. There is a grape that you get in California that is grown in what's called Zinfandel. And it's a very rich, red wine. So if you come to California, come and see me, and I'll buy you a glass of Zinfandel from the central coast of California. That's my favorite.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. Nice discussion. Thank you very much.